What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for December 24th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Christmas Eve Tuesday edition of the podcast. Happy Christmas Eve, Merry Christmas Eve, whatever it is, or however you say it. It is Tuesday, so it's time for our weekly motivation / positivity. And today I've been sitting on this one for a while, and just the mood I'm in, I think it's an appropriate one for today. It comes from none other than Snoop Dogg. And Snoop says, you can go broke and get money again, but you can't be fake and then real again. And I think this quote is more about being fake than anything. The money thing is obvious, but it's a funny quote. But I think the message is just be your authentic self. Don't try to be something you're not. Nothing to me is worse than someone who tries to be fake and act like something they're not, changes like a chameleon depending on who they're hanging out with. And as Snoop says, once you're fake, you're fake. You can't go back to being real. One of the things I hate more than anything are people that lie. So just be who you are, embrace it. And if you don't like who you are, work to change it. And I think as we approach the new year, I think it's important. I know everybody does resolutions and things like that, but make 2025 the year that you become the real you. Let it all out, be who you are, and don't be fake. And as Snoop says, you can go broke and get money again, but you can't be fake, then be real again. And that is this week's motivation / positivity. All right, some quick housekeeping notes before we get into the episode. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, at PhillyJimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont. Continue to spread the word. I've been saying it. It's a grassroots movement. We're getting there. We're regularly featured in the On Pattison email newsletter, so go check them out. Subscribe to that. We're still working this week with some stuff for the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. Very blessed to be able to work with that organization. So like I said, just continue to spread the word. If you're digging this, likely someone in your circle will as well. And some quick programming note, we will be on tomorrow. I will be recording it later today, so might likely be shorter. There's not anything else really going on in Philly sports today. So there won't be really many updates. I doubt we're going to get anything on Jalen Hurts and the Eagles until likely later in the day tomorrow or even Thursday. So it won't be 100% current because I'll be recording it earlier. However, the Philadelphia sports world does not stop on Christmas, so neither will we. All right, 25 days of kindness. We're kind of wrapping this up. I hope you've been able to implement and do some of the things that are on there. This one is very easy to do, and I'm not saying go to the Giant or Acme and pay for somebody's entire grocery bill. Unless you can afford it, that's fine too. But pay for someone's order in line. If you're in line at Wawa and somebody's getting a coffee and a donut, offer to pay for it. Whatever it may be. I did this a couple weeks ago after the Eagles game. Happened to pop into Wawa to grab a Gatorade for my wife on the way home and paid for a guy's coffee and donut. I guess he was going in to work the late shift. Doesn't take much, couple bucks, but kind of made his day. Hopefully he was able to pay it forward. So if you're in picking up something quick at Wawa, I don't know if anybody buys the newspaper anymore. That used to be the one thing I would do every day. But just offer to pay for their coffee, donut, whatever it could be. And let's spread some kindness here as we head into Christmas. All right. Sixers. Interesting game. The enigma that is the Philadelphia 76ers season this year continues. They won against the Spurs 111-106. Tyrese Maxey had 32, caught fire in the fourth quarter, scoring 12 to put the Sixers over the hump. It was a game they had the lead. The Spurs battled back, and then Tyrese turned it on in the fourth. If you're keeping score at home, I lost yet another Sixers bet on the hook. I had them -5.5. They won by 5. But the story of the game was Joe was ejected, got called for an offensive foul, did not like it, got all fired up, caught 2 tees, Did look like I was reading about this morning. It did look like he touched the ref, but I guess the NBA ref committee or whoever looks at that said it was incidental. There'll be no further punishments like a suspension or anything like that. But I guess my takeaway from all of this is the fire, and I don't know whether it was frustration, whether it was something that maybe he's going to light a fire under this team or not. Maybe it's the spark. And I've been saying they're a dumpster fire, so hopefully it's not the spark that explodes the team. But it also likely means he only played 14 minutes last night. I would think that there's a good chance he plays tomorrow against the Celtics on Christmas Day, but we'll see how it goes. But Sixers 111-106 over the Spurs down to Wells Fargo Center. Joe ejected from the game. Probably won't be suspended. I would imagine, like I said, with a day off in between games, the fact that he only played 14 minutes, hopefully we'll get to see him on Christmas Day tomorrow. But Tyrese was the star of the game, 32 points, including 12 in the fourth quarter. And then there was the Flyers. Speaking of ugly, just overall ugly game. They lost to the Penguins out in Pittsburgh 7-3. They got off to a slow start, never really recovered. They did make it 4-3 at one point, and then I think they gave up a couple empty netters. Just goaltending has not been good. Going into the season, we thought this was going to be one of the strengths, but recently they have just not been good. The holiday break is coming for them probably at the right time, and hopefully they can use this to rest, recharge, and figure it out and get their stuff together heading into the next part of the season. Be sure to check out my boys at the Clashing Conferences podcast. Doing great things over there on their fans network. That is available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. And then just because it's Christmas Eve, just because you can't get delivery, go to Philly Goat. Go do some shopping. They have all kinds of good stuff. They have that coffee now. They have any kind of shirt you want. Get ready for the Eagles playoff push. Sixers, you name it, they got it. Go check it out. PhillyGoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right, let's get into the Eagles, though. Let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, who was the GOAT of the game? 64% of you said it was Saquon, despite being shut down for most of the second half, and I think I would have to agree with you there. Thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. We're going to have a little bit of fun with today's question of the day. But had some time to kind of rewatch some things, read up and look at some of the post-game press conferences and everything. And I'm not as upset about the loss as I was when it happened. And here's why. And if you think about this, it took a cacophony of ridiculousness. It's one of my favorite phrases to say on this podcast. But it took a cacophony of ridiculousness for the Eagles to lose that game. C.J. Gardner-Johnson getting thrown out for basically talking trash. He got a personal foul called on him for getting punched in the face. You have your starting quarterback go down with a concussion. Your normally sure-handed receiver drops a catchable pass that would have been sealed the game for the Eagles. A defense that just could not stop Washington in the second half. And I think you can make the case that there's plenty of blame to go around. Could you blame Smitty for that? Absolutely. Could you blame the defense for that? Absolutely. Could you blame C.J. Gardner-Johnson for that? Sure. He's got to be better with his emotions, and I get that he was saying he was fired up on what he thought was a dirty hit on Jalen. And listen, I'm not saying to change the way he plays, but you got to rein that in. It's kind of like the Jalen Carter effect. Like, use that to your advantage, but don't go over the top with it. Special teams certainly did not help the Eagles. It seems like Washington always had good field position. And to the defense's credit, they stepped up a lot in the first half to hold them down. They definitely missed C.J. Gardner-Johnson there in the fourth quarter. So, again, I think there's enough blame to go around. It happens sometimes. And truthfully, and I meant to look this up, and I don't think they did, but only the Eagles would have had, if they'd have won this game and won out, likely still weren't going to get the number one seed. So basically, they would have had to win 16 games in a row to win the Super Bowl. Only two teams that I can think of off the top of my head have ever won 16 games in a row. And that was the 72 Dolphins and the 2008 Patriots, or 2007. I forget which year it was. So, I mean, the chances of them winning 16 games in a row were very slim to begin with. I'm thinking they're going to use this as a wake-up call, refocus, regroup, and they're going to come out even better next week against Dallas, no matter who the quarterback is, because Jalen is in concussion protocol, and I guess a lot's going to be dependent. It's all run by the NFL and the independent neurologists and things like that. So take all of that into consideration, and I'm okay with it. And I know, like, I'm not saying I'm taking moral victories. I'm not saying it was a scheduled loss and anything like that. I'm just saying, like, big picture, if you take a step back and do the 30,000-foot view, it's not the end of the world that they lost this game, especially since it was a game that they could have won despite all of the ridiculousness that happened surrounding this game. And in reality, there's two games now that they've lost that they could have won if guys make easy catches. And even Saquon's catch that he dropped when Kenny Pickett short was the wrong shoulder and he rolled. You got to pull that down. So I'm okay with it. And like I said, I was able to kind of digest, process it. I'm not as upset. Like, obviously, I never want the Eagles to lose. However, if you kind of look at it and take a step back and look, winning 16 games in a row is damn near impossible. It's only happened, again, I don't think the 85 Bears won 16 in a row because of where they lost. So, I mean, it's damn near impossible. So, good time for a loss. They're still set up in a good spot. Likely the number one seed isn't going to happen. And all they need to do is win the division, and they'll have the 2 seed. So they'll be in good shape for that, depending on how the matchups and everything. Likely means 2 home playoff games, assuming they win the first one. But like I said, moving on, I'm okay with it. And it could, like I said, there's plenty that went wrong that can be fixed, but I think this is going to be a rallying point for them. And I know people are like, oh, well, here we go. This is where, and they've done nothing but when they've had adversity this year, but meet it head on and come out the other side better than it. I think this is nothing else. I think you use it as a learning experience, you move on, and I think they're going to be okay. Some final notes on that. Hopefully, this puts to bed any of the question about who the real MVP of this team is. I know there's a lot of folks out there that were like, oh, you could have put anybody on this team and they'd be 12-2 or whatever it is. No. It's Jalen's team. Jalen is to borrow a line from Reggie Jackson, Jalen is the straw that stirs the drink. So hopefully that puts to bed any more of the Jalen criticism. On the broadcast, I typically like Greg Olsen, but that whole broadcast team was super annoying. Looks like we're going to have them again next week for the Cowboys game. But Greg, I feel like in the game, he didn't shut up for the first 5 minutes of the game. And then and I'm not one, like, I know some people don't like Joe Buck because it's always like he's against Philly teams and people were questioning Greg Olsen and not sticking up for the Eagles or whatever BS it was. I'm not worried about that. He was just super annoying. Like, he literally did not shut up the entire game. So hopefully he'll be better on Sunday. Speaking of that Cowboys game, it did get flexed to 1 o'clock from the 4 o'clock window. No real surprises there. Definitely is going to impact my going to the game due to CYO basketball, so I will not be able to go to the game now. Don't want to miss the first two CYO games for both kids. But 1 o'clock, the Eagles take on the Cowboys. The line opened up at 9.5. That's likely going to move depending upon Jalen's health and if he plays or not. But hopefully we get an update today before I record. If not, we'll have more on the Eagles-Cowboys on Thursday on our regularly scheduled episode. All right, let's have some fun with today's question of the day. Been watching a lot of Christmas movies throughout the whole entire holiday season. And I've seen a lot of people post polls and talk about what is the best Christmas movie. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Which it's not, by the way. But nobody talks about the villains in these Christmas movies. So my question to you today, who is the best villain in holiday movies? And we got a great list here. Is it the Grinch? My personal favorite. And you can make the argument that the Grinch is not the villain. The Grinch is actually the hero. But we'll leave it as the villain here. Is it Harry and Marv from Home Alone? Is it Professor Hinkle? Now, this dude is a jerk. Professor Hinkle is the magician in Frosty the Snowman who throws away his hat. The kids find it. There happens to be magic in the hat. And then Professor Hinkle spends the entire movie trying to melt Frosty and get that hat back. Or is it the abominable snow monster in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? You could make the argument for Ebenezer Scrooge, but that's an older movie, and kind of like the Grinch, he's sort of the hero in the movie. But who is your... And if there's somebody on the list that you think is a bigger villain, let me know that too. Let's have some fun on Christmas Eve here. But who's the biggest villain in a Christmas movie? Is it the Grinch, Harry and Marv, Professor Hinkle, or the abominable snow monster? Hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the voice and text line. But let me know. Let's have some fun with this today. Share your favorite Christmas memory, your favorite Christmas movie, whatever you want. But let me know, who is the biggest villain in a Christmas movie? The Grinch, Harry and Marv, Professor Hinkle, or the abominable snow monster? And thinking about this list now, the Grinch is my favorite character. I might have to go Professor Hinkle. He's kind of a jerk. But let me know your thoughts, and let's have some fun on Christmas Eve. All right, speaking of Christmas Eve, today, let's go back to the year 2000. And on this day in 2000, the Eagles beat the Bengals 16-7 at the Vet, finished out their season 11-5. They were coming off the bye. They had a random Week 16 bye that year. They had already clinched a playoff spot. Charles Johnson scored the Eagles' only touchdown. David Akers kicked 3 field goals for the Eagles. His second field goal of the game broke the Eagles' single season scoring record. He ended up the year with 121 points, setting a new mark for scoring for the Eagles in a season. He personally would break his own record 5 more times throughout his career in Philadelphia. And for those, I always like to say this, and a lot of people do it too. If you're keeping score at home, the current record is 150 points set by Cody Parkey in 2014. But after the game, the Eagles were scoreboard watching because they were still trying to figure out who and where they were going to play. The Lions lost, so they knew they would be playing Tampa Bay, and it was just a matter of whether that game would be in Tampa or Philly. And this was huge because if you think back and remember back, there was a stat where for the first how many ever years of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers franchise history that they didn't win games when the temperature was under 40 degrees. So coming into Philly on New Year's Eve, that would have been a huge thing. Martin Gramatica missed a game-winning field goal in the fourth quarter up in Green Bay to send the game into overtime, and then Ryan Longwell won it in overtime for the Packers, meaning the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would come to Philly on New Year's Eve, and that New Year's Eve game was the reason why I have Eagles season tickets to this day. But on this day, it was the Eagles beating the Bengals 16-7 to finish that season 11-5. That was the turnaround year where they went from, I guess they were, 5-11 in 99, Andy's first year, to this was Donovan's first full year as a starter. Was in the MVP conversation, led them to the playoffs, an 11-5 record. They did beat Tampa Bay in that playoff game. Also in this game, David Akers set the Eagles' single-season scoring mark with 121 points. And then finally today, our last forgotten team in Philly sports history. Hope you had some fun with this. These are teams that you either did not know existed or forgot even played in Philadelphia. And the last one here, the Philadelphia Warriors. The Golden State Warriors, yes, Steph Curry, Draymond Green. That team played in Philly from 1946 to 1962. They were an original member of the Basketball Association of America, which later merged with the National Basketball League to form the NBA. The Philadelphia Warriors won 2 championships while in Philly, 1947 and 1956. They had 8 Hall of Famers while they were in Philly, including Wilt Chamberlain, Paul Arizin, Tom Gola, Guy Rogers, and Eddie Gottlieb, a virtual who's who of Philly basketball elite. They played their games at the Philadelphia Arena and Convention Hall. Wilt's 100-point game happened while as a member of the Philadelphia Warriors up in Hershey. And eventually near the end, Eddie Gottlieb sold the team and the new group moved them to San Francisco. And then that paved the way for the Syracuse Nationals to move into Philly a year later and take the spot and become your team, your town, your Philadelphia 76ers. But the Warriors are probably, it's either them or the A's is the most popular former team in Philadelphia. They were the 2 major teams that played here that eventually moved. But today's forgotten team, the Philadelphia Warriors, winning 2 NBA championships while here. I guess the first was a Basketball Association of America championship and then an NBA championship. But one of the original members of the NBA, one of the greatest teams to ever play in Philadelphia, some of the greatest players to ever play. The Philadelphia Warriors are today's forgotten team in Philly sports history. On this day in the year 2000, Eagles beat the Bengals 16-7 in the final game of the season. They finished 11-5, found out later in the locker room that Tampa Bay would be coming to Philly a week later. The temperature was going to be cold, and we all know how that worked out. Be sure to let me know who your favorite Christmas villain is, or who's the best Christmas villain. The Grinch, Harry and Marv, Professor Hinkle from Frosty the Snowman, or the abominable snow monster from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. If there's somebody I'm missing, let me know that. But let's have some fun on Christmas Eve. Let's spread some cheer and some joy and just have some fun. We will have an episode tomorrow, albeit a short one, as we get ready for Sixers Celtics on Christmas Day. The NBA on NBC. I guess the game's on NBC. I guess it would be ABC. Either way, Sixers Celtics tomorrow. Will Joe play? Will he not? Your guess is as good as mine. Make sure you have a great Christmas Eve no matter what you're celebrating. Be safe out there. Don't do anything stupid. Don't drink too much eggnog. Don't drink and drive, more importantly, though. But have some fun. Be safe. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for December 24th, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Christmas Eve. And until next time, ho, ho, ho.